Hey everyone, welcome to Bourbon and Branding. Today we are going to be drinking some Elijah Craig, and we're going to be talking about some topics that are a little bit more serious, but they're relevant to kind of where we are in the world right now. So yeah, hope you enjoyed today's episode. Let's dive in. All right, Dave, today we are drinking Elijah Craig, barrel proof. It's 121 proof.
That is grown man sauce right there.
Yes, it is. This is batch B522 for anybody who cares.
So what does that mean?
So I think there's A, B, and C.
Okay.
Somebody will correct me, I'm sure. But I think there's A, B, and C, batch A, B, and C. And then the 5, I think, is May, and then 22 is the year. So okay. May 2022. Yeah. There you go, sir.
And I thank you.
All right.
So cheers.
Indeed. Cheers.
Oof.
Yeah, you're gonna feel the
that is
heat.
A punch.
Yeah,
that is
right
heat.
Out of the gate.
So I was online the other day, and perusing as you do, and on LinkedIn specifically, I do dabble on LinkedIn and
that's your social media of choice.
It's addictive. It is totally addictive, and it's not like other social medias, right? Where you're like snapping. Well, we do snap pictures and stuff, but it's like finding ways to compare like education and resumes and stuff.
Are you trying to find a way to like make it more sophisticated and?
I'm trying to find a way to make my FOMO more justified. Yeah.
There you go.
So, anyways, I was on there, and this whole conversation, you and I kind of started talking about this idea of what is the social responsibility of a brand in the world, and this got brought up again being on LinkedIn. Somebody made a post, as a lot of things going on in the world right now, about some of the bombings going on over in the Middle East right now, and Israel and everything happening. And in these images, there were like photoshopped brand marks for major corporations, and they had like the McDonald's, the Coca-Colas, the stuff of the world, and so I was looking at this and kind of looking at these images, and I was like, wow, that's a really interesting take. Well, what are people saying about this? And so I perused down a little bit and started reading, and the gentleman who was posting it, we'll call him Greg. I don't actually remember the name. Greg was talking about how it was the blood of all of these people, the injustices of the world, things going on in the world were the fault of these corporations. And we needed to hold accountable these corporations. We needed to do this in order to the agencies, the corporations, to make a meaningful change in the world. And I was really struck by that. And so I responded. I actually have what I wrote here. I'll just read what I wrote. I said, it is dangerous when we take people's accountability out of the equation. While people are a massive part of the brand we build, they are not synonymous. And I kept thinking about this idea of how we can't educate or legislate hate out of the world. It starts in people's hearts. And the idea that we should stop hiding behind these symbols that we build.
So essentially people they're not taking accountability for their own hatred or their own actions. They're just pointing the finger at McDonald's, or they're pointing the finger at Pepsi and saying it's your fault.
Yeah. And while I do think brands are made up of people, and we write that all the time, right? This idea that the people make the brands, and there's value in that. something struck me odd in the fact that you're completely blaming the brand when there are people making decisions too. But then, unpack it even more, right? Like you go back to, and you think about like World War II and the not so good of people who were doing not so good of things. And, not many people think about this, but Nazi Germany they were incredible marketers.
Yeah.
Absolutely incredible marketers. They knew exactly what they were doing. They painted their picture in such a way to convince an entire group of people to make horrible decisions. And so in that sense, right, like the brand it has a voice and it's attracting and it's making people think certain things, maybe make decisions that they should not make. But at the same time, those are still people making those decisions. I don't know. This is a big conversation. And
yeah, I guess the line of where branding and propaganda meet, how do you, how do you get to decide where that line is and who gets to decide if they've crossed it? Because I think that's, for me, that there's this whole idea of like the chicken or the egg, like who comes first? Like, is the branding pushing the hatred and then the people are just kind of following suit? Or is there already hatred amongst the people and they're just hiding behind the brand because they need a scapegoat. They need, somebody to point the finger at.
Yeah.
And that's kind of interesting because
millennials and Gen Z, we don't point fingers and
right.
scapegoats at all.
Well, we never point fingers at ourselves, right? Yeah. I mean, but the point is, where to your point, like where does the responsibility lie? Because to be a good branding strategist, you are actually trying to put out a particular message. Like you're
Correct.
actually trying to form thought. Now, hopefully you're trying to form thought around your brand, but if you have huge influence, like, the McDonald's of the world, or, you're everywhere in the world, everything you say actually makes an impact in all sorts of different spheres, like not just
right.
the food you eat, right? And so, like, if McDonald's pulls out of I have no idea if McDonald's is in Palestine, but let's say they are, and they decide, well, we're closing shop in
They're
Gaza.
Everywhere.
Well, I'm just saying, if they said, to be safe and to keep our employees safe, we're going to get out of Palestine.
Yeah.
Right? Well, that's sending a huge message to the Palestinian people, to the Arabs, that like, well, we don't want to be there, and that can be perceived in a negative light, or it could be perceived on the other side as pro-Israel, and Israel, or America, whoever, could be cheering that and saying that's great. Well, McDonald's is not trying to do either of those. They're just trying to protect their employees, right, and protect their brand. So I think, and that's an interesting point. The bigger the brand, the more influence in the spillover, right? Like, no longer are they just making shoes if you're Nike, but now you're advocating for, a particular race of people or whatever. I mean, it's...
Yeah, no. And there is a group think, right? Like when you have a group of people together and you put them together and you weaponize something in a way. Actually, I was thinking about this the other day. Picasso said art is a weapon, right? He did, like, painting shouldn't just be about putting something nice on the wall, above grandma's couch. It's art is a weapon. And he said that right after, right, the Spanish War, after all the bombings, Guernica got painted. And so talking about that, art, traditionally good art, is kind of a communication tool, and it sways a lot of people, and it can do a lot of damage, and it can also do a lot of amazing things.
So how far outside of the company's product or what their primary objective should a brand strategist think? Like, should they be solely focused on how do we sell this product, or should they be thinking outside of that box and going, okay, how is this going to affect a particular demographic? How is this? Because I think you're catering to an audience. You're thinking about, okay, our demographic is 18 to 25. Well, those that group of people think culturally a particular way as well. And so should a brand strategist be dabbling in that world as well, or should they just try to cater their art towards the vantage point of their product? Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, that totally makes sense.
Like how far, because that's where I'm going back to
like
the question
how far
of,
is too far?
How far is too far? Like when does it become propaganda? When do you actually start pushing a narrative that has nothing to do with your product? And then does it become, then is it actually the brand does have a responsibility, and you could almost say that some companies maybe that are big enough are starting wars. Now, I'm not necessarily saying that McDonald's started the war in Israel. Obviously, that's been going on for a lot longer than McDonald's has been around. But the idea is, where is that line and who gets to decide?
I think maybe we're talking a little bit about the responsibility of the artist, about the creative, right? The brand strategist.
Well, and you probably have a group of people, I would imagine, for these larger companies.
So that really is a chicken and the egg. It's like, as you were saying this, picture this. Picture this, man. I started seeing this idea of like almost like two sides, right? Like a puzzle piece or two parts of a battery, a positive and negative. It's kind of like you can tell a really compelling story and push people towards something, right? Like you can be that master manipulator, and I sure hope like that's one thing that I always bear in mind with the responsibility of being a creative in the world is tell the truth.
Yeah.
Always tell the truth. Like I think that there's been a lot of destructive things done with lies. But so you push and you try to get your message out there really clearly, and you present it in a way that people will receive it, hopefully. And then it's kind of like how much of that weight and responsibility is on the viewer. Mm-hmm. It's kind of this like the same question. Like I love art history, so it's kind of the same question as Andy Warhol was asking, or even before that, like Robert Rauschenberg was asking the same question. Like how much is it the viewer's responsibility to interpret meaning into a piece of artwork or into a message that's out there versus the artist itself. And like Warhol was just fascinated about that relationship between the two, right? Like the viewer seeing and experiencing one thing, the artist is saying and conveying something else, and where they meet, that's where the creative magic happens. And I almost think it's kind of like that maybe with what we're talking about here, where I don't want to completely devoid and divorce like this idea of like, if you make a bad decision, you know what I mean? If you've got evil things going on in your heart and you're gung-ho about doing horrible things, it doesn't matter what weapon you have. It doesn't matter what situation you have. You're going to find, because you have the motive to do that.
Right.
And so like, that's just a catalyst. It's kind of like again, I hate to use it. It's such a sad, horrible period of time, but like in a lot of ways, I think I look back at, like, you read about people in Germany during World War II, and a lot of things that you read about are these normal people who did horrible things because horrible things were presented to them, and the monster was just let out of the closet, so to speak. It was always there, but the monster came out.
Well, and I think we're talking about some interesting things, because when you think about branding a business, it feels very like you're almost trying to figure out a way to present a product. Let's just boil it down. I mean, I know there's way more than that, right? But if you're talking about, okay, how do you get people to go to war, right? Then like, what are you branding at that point, you know? And I think that's where kind of the philosophical side of all this is really interesting, because, you know, in our world, branding is very business centric, right? It's how do we present a business in a way that meets whatever the audience is trying to, where the audience is, right? Like we're trying to present a product. It may be a product that's really geared towards 50 or 60 year olds, but the new demographic coming up needs this product or will need it. So we're trying to, twist it or cater it into a way that will make it palatable to that that other demographic. But that's like so far from propaganda. But then you have, how do you get people to go to war, or how do you, not to bring up a whole another can of worms, but like you think of Target, right? Like they really turned a corner to push kind of the LGBT products and support for that, and that's fine. That's but they went away from their product and they kind of
became a social agenda.
It became a social agenda, and they began to brand themselves in alliance with a group of people and not a product. And so,
but that is what a target market is all along, and that there is a challenge there. Certain people will respond to certain feature, benefit, value relationships on that brand ladder, and so and certain people won't respond. And I think
Target has a great product. Like they have things that you want. You would want to shop there. Why would a brand strategist, or why would a company go out of their way to align themselves one way or the other, whether conservative or not, or it doesn't matter, to put off somebody who would shop there, but because you've gone outside of the brand, you've gone outside of the product that you sell. Like why? I don't understand that. Like why would you do that? Why would you risk a huge group of people who already shop there, like the product, for the sake of the, and I'll get in trouble for this, but for the sake of the propaganda, for the sake of the kind of artificial argument? I don't understand that.
I think
how is that strategic from a business standpoint?
At the end of the day, you have a legacy being built upon a brand, right? Powerful stories become almost like storm winds. They can blow things any direction that they want. And so if you have a really good story and a really powerful brand, and you put them in a position to be influential, and everybody wants to, I think everybody at the end of the day, there's some desire to have a legacy with your brand. You want to leave something behind. People want to be known for some reason that was bigger and outside of just a product they sell, I think a lot of times. And for instance now, think about this. Like you have car companies pledging zero carbon, right? Zero carbon, diversity, equity, and inclusion, equal workforce labor, all of these things. None of them are bad. Like it's these are all possible good things, but it's interesting, at what point does the person have a responsibility?
Right, that's true.
Versus does the corporation have the responsibility? And if you're really distilling people down to just, we are the brands that we keep, we are the company we keep, then where does the individual end and the brand begin? That would be my...
Yeah, I would agree. I personally think that you as a person have a responsibility to
make decisions,
and a company will make decisions for themselves as well, but that you can't... You can't hide behind the brand, like you said earlier. You can't point the finger. You just you have to own your own decisions.
People love to belong to something. People love to believe in something. People love good stories, and I think a lot of I think it becomes, sometimes the story is so good, and our minds are like so wrapped up in the story that I don't necessarily think that we see all ends. I do think though that maybe being on guard, right? Like, and I'm saying this as somebody who builds brands for a living, so
right.
that's really weird. Be mindful of it. At the end of the day, like there is there might be absolute truth in what they're presenting. And I hope, like again, I love the truth of presenting something I really can stand behind when I build a brand. And so there might be that truth there. But at the end of the day, we all still, like, as you build a brand, are taking the information and presenting it in the most palatable way possible.
And then there's the perception of what people enjoy, and depending on where you land on that, your presentation of that information is going to look differently. And so,
there's so much there.
And one person might perceive something as hate, and another person might perceive it as
True.
love. I mean, it's
True.
a very, it's a very dynamic range, especially in the world we live in.
True.
And I think that's where it gets really sticky and interesting. But like you said, I don't think we're going to answer it today, but it is a fun topic to try and unpack a little bit.
And I was going to say, you talked about like not answering it, and to that end, years ago when Jen and I lived in Cleveland, Ohio, we were at an art opening, and I still remember this, and I was really impacted by it. The gallery director comes up, and she commented, and she said, we're in a world right now where everybody wants to have the answers for everything. I know this is right. I have the answer, and I'm so assured of it because so-and-so said it, or because I saw it on social media, or because, some channels, touted it as fact. And she said, but the sad part is, as creative people, like, nobody asks questions anymore. Like, good question. Like, and it's okay to not have the answer. Like, are you okay to just be, like, curious and wonder a little bit more? And there's a magic, right, in, like, not having all the answers. And that's what I keep thinking about that as we're talking about these things. It's like, I don't know.
Yeah.
But we do the best we can, and that's enough.
Yeah, I agree. Well, on that note, we have some business to attend to. How would you rate the Elijah Craig?
Almost gone. That is a hot whiskey.
It is.
It's really hot. And I'm not against hot whiskeys. Firstly, I don't think this would be a daily drinker for me.
No, I would agree. Based on the proof, though, more than anything. Actually, I enjoy the taste. I think it has a really good taste, but I couldn't drink it every day.
I think I wouldn't be able to do my job in the morning if I drank Elijah Craig 121 proof every day. So no, I don't think this would be a daily drinker. I don't know, like, if you put a single ice cube in there, how it would be. I could see it maybe toning it down a notch, maybe capturing more of the flavor if you had that single large ice cube in there. That could be nice.
Yeah.
So I could imagine this. I would go on the rocks with this, not as a daily drinker, just maybe on the rocks, summer night. Picture this. Beautiful back porch, summer night, on the rocks.
Okay.
Cascading sunlight. We're going to get really artsy-fartsy here for a second. Whip out the bottle. Whip out the bottle. Jason, do you want to drink some of this Elijah Craig? Probably wouldn't.
Okay, well, I'm going to go a different route.
Okay.
I like the sunset. I can picture myself.
Okay.
But I'm going to. Okay, I have no idea if this is blasphemous or not, but I am gonna make an old fashioned out of this. Like, that's the only way I think. Because I do like it neat, but it is. I think it's too
like a mixed drink.
Yeah, so I think I would go mixed drink. But it wouldn't. I'm not gonna mix it with 10 different things. Like, I want it as close to this as possible, but just taking the edge off a little bit. So yeah, I would try it as an old fashioned. I've never tried it as an old fashioned, but I think that's the way I would go.
I think that could make.
And
I think
also
could make
not a daily drinker, but But I would do that with the sunset too, just for the record.
That's good. Sorry if that was too much to our friends at home. So, yes, I actually think it would make a phenomenal old fashioned too. I'm still going to stick to the single ice cube just because I already painted the picture in my mind.
Fair enough. All right.
And
tasty score.
It's not propaganda that I'm painting in people's minds. I'm going to give this a 3.
Okay.
Like a strong 3. But
I think I agree with you. I think I'm going to go 3 as well. We're pretty careful about the 4 and 5s.
Yeah.
I mean, it smells really. It's the more I drink it, as we were talking, and as I drank it, it did get. It got better and better.
Totally.
But I agree. I think I'm gonna go 3. Thank you guys for joining us today. If you have any thoughts or comments on the show and how much responsibility do brands have to shape the culture, we'd love to know. Thank you guys again, and like and subscribe. We'll see you on the next one.